thing, they drive on emotion. And so with emotion, you get people angry. You're killing off our planet. No evidence. In fact, polar bear populations have been growing. We're probably going to have to start hunting them just to keep them down. Look at what happened with deer. I love the deer. It's always a fun thing. We got deer that are eating the blueberries in our yard. I'm very upset about that. But the thing is that, and I love them, they're really cute, but unless you realize, and you folks, especially as you get further away from the city, you start realizing, you know, there's a reason you have to cull the herd a bit. Otherwise, they will actually kill themselves off by starvation because there's not enough food left when you get to that. So that's why, without a natural predator, man has to go out there and do it. And venison's very tasty. So I'm happy with that. But see, that's just it. You don't understand sometimes, and that's why it's amazing how emotion will drive these arguments, not facts. So they decided, as the left and progressives especially are wanting to do, it's amazing to me how they will change names to reinvent something. So we had that one, of course, with global warming. That didn't sell, especially since we weren't warming anymore, right? So it went to climate change. When you do that, then there's another one they've just done, which you're going to love, because they're trying climate change isn't selling either. But what they were doing is they decided to go to climate change. Now that kind of covers everything. It's like, if it's changing, that's bad and we must be responsible for it. They, under the Clean Air Act now, are currently allowed to regulate CO2. And Senator Murkowski from Alaska tried to get that overturned, but a whole bunch of Democrats went along with it. And so unfortunately, we didn't overturn it at this point. There are lawsuits right now ongoing with this EPA thing. Because what we've done, and this is how it works. This is how, and you guys probably know this, you're all smart people, that's why you're here. But when it comes to regulation, since they know the voters won't like it, they try and put it under some existing law. And just say, okay, we've got a thing that says Clean Air Act, and if the Supreme Court says CO2 can be considered a pollutant, well, now we can regulate that under the Clean Air Act. You guys have nothing to say about it. Neither has science. We don't care. Now Lisa Jackson and the EPA can say, it's considered a pollutant. We can now regulate it. And that will, if they start doing it, they haven't started that yet. If they do it, it will impact every one of us. Because no matter what you do, and as Glenn Beck pointed out, his father's a baker, or was, bakeries, you're going to be hit hard. You're putting out a bunch of CO2 with your baking, restaurants, things like that. The things you don't think about that will be putting out carbon dioxide and are now going to be regulated. And even though it's an exaggeration, we breathe this stuff out. It can, and look at China. You're allowed one child. Who's to say that in the real world, if you've got a government like that someone can't say, there are too many of you breathing under our little EPA, and we need to limit that. They can, because it's already being done in other countries. The idea that it can't happen here, when you've got a guy and a group around him that admire Mao, well, there's a problem. So that's what we're dealing with. So let's learn a little bit about carbon dioxide. This is what it's all based on. This whole cap and trade thing is based on carbon dioxide, which, as I pointed out to many folks I've talked to, see, they make mistakes, these groups, and we're calling them on it. Their mistake was global warming. They probably should have started with climate change or something else. When you narrow it to warming, and then you don't warm for 20 years, there's a problem. So, okay, we need to go to climate change, because that'll cover the fact that it's not warming right now. They stuck with CO2 when they probably should have went to something else, which is what they're doing now. But I'll get to that in a moment. So with CO2, because they stuck with that, this was the thing. It's carbon dioxide, it's fossil fuels, these evil fossil fuels, which are the single most powerful type of fuel there is out there. We don't have anything that will rival fossil fuel, not solar, not wind, none of that can rival fossil fuels energy and output and our ability to get it on a consistent basis. So this was perfect, they thought, CO2. All right, CO2, and for those of you back, and I'll read this to you. It's a trace gas. Okay, that means it is very, very minute in the atmosphere. Right now it is 392. This is as of most recent count from the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii. 392 parts per million. So you think about this, let's say we just had a cube of air right here, and if there were a million little molecules, 392 of them are CO2. Out of a million molecules, it's nothing. In other words, it's 0.04% of our atmosphere. Not even 1%, not even 0.5%, it's 0.04% of our air, CO2. For CO2 to do what they're claiming, this has to be a supermolecule of some sort. This must be some hidden power because it's 0.04% that's warming our planet. Come on. Secondly, CO2 levels, and I will clarify this, have remained steady since about 1850. Now what do I mean by that? That means that, yes, we may have gone up from the upper 200s to somewhere in the upper 300s, as far as parts per million. We may have increased 100 parts per million in that time. 100 parts per million. It's nothing. It is an insignificant increase. So you can argue that it's remained steady. When I show you a graph of CO2 levels from the past, you'll understand this a little bit better. This I will walk through it with you here real quickly. This, by the way, the green line, I always love these estimates. This was the forecast, but as you can see, it's way above all the reality, so that's not right. The actual real measurements from Mauna Loa, this is 1960 through now. This is, and I love when they make a chart, because if you create a chart, if you're in engineering or math at all, and you create a chart with a certain type of spacing, you can make it look like you're really going up and down big, even if it's only minute steps. So here we are at 0.51, 1.52. So these are parts per million. So we're talking about, all right, it started in 1960 at about almost 1 part per million above that longer term average. And now it's at about almost 4, almost 3. So we've gone up about 2 to 3 parts per million since 1960. Ooh, huge. 2 to 3 parts per million, amazing. So in about 100 years, we may go up another 20 or 30 parts per million. It's nothing. It means nothing. So what they're saying is the CO2 increase, which is insignificant, of course it looks cool here, is creating this warming. All right, well, there's a problem with that as well. First of all, man, our output, and no one argues this, contributes only 1/5 of the total CO2, or 0.008%. This is our contribution to this horrible, horrible gas that helps plants grow. This is our contribution, 1/5. We need to raise this. I want it to be 5/5. I want us contributing all the CO2, because all these plants are going to go nuts out here. You got proof of that in a second. CO2 is necessary for life on Earth. How do you call it a pollutant when it's necessary for life on this planet? I love that. Methane the same way. All these things they say are so evil. Without them, we would not be here. We need CO2 because that feeds the plants feed the animals, and then we all survive. Without CO2, it doesn't work. Gotta have it. And it's been a lot higher in the past. Now again, because you're back, I'll go through this with you. This is a graph. A lot of scientists will plot graphs from right to left to show time, and this is the most recent. This is the last 70 million years based on ice core samples. All these scientists from both sides of the argument use these same ice core samples, and yes, they know this is there, but they're not going to use this in their discussion. It's all about what's happening now, and it's man's fault. But let's look at 70 million years. Well, right in here, anywhere from 30 to 50 million years ago, we had CO2 levels at about 1,800 parts per million. We're here. 1,800. We're here. Earth didn't burn up. We're here. Okay, so it's been higher. It's been a lot higher. This is the last 70 million years. This is the last 550 million years. We're here. This is 7,000 parts per million. They've got it in their research. The ice core samples are there. Any one of these scientists can look at it. 7,000 parts per million. We're at 392. And the Earth was not on fire back here. It didn't burn up. So what's going on? And of course, you see these big drops. What is this? Is it possible that we actually go through higher periods and lower periods in Earth's history? That doesn't make sense. Isn't our climate static? Shouldn't it be the same all year? Shouldn't every winter be cold and every summer be warm the same way? Isn't that what normals are all about? No. We know that the Earth goes through extreme cycles. In the last 1 million years, there have been 8 ice ages. 8 in the last 1 million years, each one of them lasting 100,000 years. We will, and are probably about to, but we will go into the next ice age soon, on a geologic timescale soon. It's going to happen. There's nothing we can do. I don't care how much carbon dioxide we throw out there, that next ice age is coming. And when it does, life on Earth will be for man, because you can't stop these monster glaciers from coming at you. We're going to wish we had warmed the planet more, if we actually could, but we can't. That's the problem. We can't. This is temperatures. Similar time period, yes, 550 million years ago to about today. Now, what you can't see, because this is 0 and you're already at 50 million years right here, is you can't see the little jump at the end. Let's assume we're 0. We're actually right now at 0.6 degrees centigrade